They have varying levels of intelligence, we found out.
Dolphins.
Some are more intelligent than others. Dolphins are real intelligent. Dogs are pretty darn intelligent. And the most intelligent animal seems like it's the chimpanzee or the apes.
When in fact,
Other than the humans are the most intelligent. Cognitive ethology. That's the study of cognitive processes in non-human animals. We call it cognitive ethology. And there were some famous experiments done by a guy named Wolfgang Kohler. He studied a monkey named Sultan, which it shows on the bottom of page 240. What he did was he set up a room, and he hung bananas from the ceiling.
Oh, I was just taking a test.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can call this that, right?
Come on, JD.
Here you go.
All right. Looking forward to that.
bless your soul,
What?
child. Sir, I said it first.
I looked at it yesterday.
Okay, so this guy, listen. This guy hung bananas from the ceiling, and he had a bunch of crates in the room, which again you can see on the bottom of 240. And the monkey couldn't reach actually that's not a monkey, that's an ape. That's a chimpanzee. The chimpanzee couldn't reach the bananas, so the chimpanzee figured out he could stack the crates on one another and stand on those and reach the bananas. So this is one of the earliest experiments into animal intelligence. You know, could an animal think its way through a problem like that?
Sounds like cool.
We know from studies like this that animals can anticipate future events. They can use numbers to label quantities, and in fact, they have apes and even parrots that can do math problems. And can coordinate activities with other animals. These are all aspects of what we think of as intelligence. So animals are intelligent to some extent. There's Wolfgang Kohler right there. And there's his experiment with the chimpanzees. And the one Sultan the Sultan was the smartest of them. He figured out the solution to the problem. He would notice that Sultan would look at it and he'd jump and he couldn't reach it, and then he looked and he was looking around, and for a while there he was like doing this.
Just like that one sitting down.
Yeah, kind of like that. He's sitting there thinking it looked like to him. What about language? Do animals have language? We think that many animals do, that the songs and stuff you hear birds singing is probably more than just song. It's probably a way of communicating. And animals have been taught to communicate. There are one thing about chimpanzees and apes is you can teach them sign language because they have hands just like we do. And they can learn sign language, and then they can communicate with you in, just like a deaf person can speak using sign language. And there's other types of systems that they've used to teach language to apes. They've used pictures and boards, kind of like hieroglyphics maybe, where they point to this picture, it means something, and they have these picture boards that they can point to communicate. A lady in the video I'll show you, she taught her parrot a whole bunch of different words. And one thing parrots can do that no other animal can do is they can actually speak. And speak English if you teach them that. And she had a parrot that had something like 300 words, and it could count, and it could do math. I'll show it to you on the video we're about to watch. Pretty amazing. So, one thing they found, that when they taught the chimpanzees how to do sign language, that the chimpanzees would constantly sign, "Let me out of this cage. I don't want to be in this cage." And that starts to bring in, if animals can tell you something like that, what they're thinking, how humane is it to keep those animals locked up like that? Some very interesting experiments that went on. There's Kanzi, a bonobo. A bonobo is an ape related to a chimpanzee. It's kind of a cousin of a chimpanzee. And it's pointing to, this is its pictures. All these pictures have a different meaning, you see. So it speaks to whoever this person is through picture language. And you can see it's got numbers there too. Bonobos are very smart. Bonobos are interesting, by the way. Bonobos society, each bonobo has sex about 30 or 40 times a day. And instead of coming up and saying hi and shaking hands like we do, they come up and have sex with one another. Just that's their way of saying hi. And the sexual episodes last like 20 seconds. It's very quick sex. Isn't that a weird society? Bonobos. Go watch it at the zoo. Alex the parrot was a famous parrot who just recently died. Who they could say, "Alex, how many green blocks are there?" And he'd go, "4 green blocks. But you could carry on a normal conversation with Alex. And they'd say, "Well, if you take the number of green blocks and divide them by the number of blue blocks, what do you get?" And he could actually do problems like that. How about that? Yeah, I got a video showing Alex. There's a couple of words associated with animal intelligence that you need to know. Anthropomorphism. Tendency to falsely attribute human qualities to non-human beings. Anthropomorphism is like saying, giving a human quality to an animal when it really doesn't possess that human quality. Like, for instance, if you're watching a fish in the fish tank and it's just sitting there and you go, "Oh, he's lonely." Or, "Oh, he's wondering what I'm doing." Fish don't wonder. They don't have the same cerebral cortex we do. They probably aren't capable of wonder. So that would be an anthropomorphism if I said, "Look at that fish, he's wondering what I'm doing." That would be anthropomorphism. And that's often done. Falsely giving human qualities to animals. And then there's something that's kind of the opposite of that. Anthropocentrism, or anthropodenial. The tendency to think mistakenly that human beings have nothing in common with other animals. There is a thought that animals don't feel pain, for instance. And, you could do whatever you want, beat a dog or whatever, and he's not going to feel pain. That would be anthropodenial. And so these things are almost opposites in some form. Sometimes you give human qualities to something that doesn't really have them, and sometimes you remove human qualities from something that really does have those qualities. We think after a lot of study that most of the emotions that we find in the brainstem, fear and love and a sex drive and happiness and joy, those are probably felt by almost all higher animals. Even down to fish. Fish have fear. You knock on the glass, they take off in one direction. So the emotions seem to be contained within most animals, but a lot of the higher functioning, things like wondering and problem solving, that is only present in animals with large cerebrums. And so these words are kind of thrown around. Do you know what anthropo means? Human qualities. And anthropology, have you ever heard that? The study of humans. So when you see anthropo, they're talking about humans. So anthropocentrism will be centered around the humans, saying that only humans have the ability to, do certain things. Only humans have feelings, which is just not true. This is a guy, he had a horse named Clever Hans. And Clever Hans could do problems. And the guy took him around to shows, and what he would do is he would say to the horse, okay, what's 5 minus 2? And the horse would go, what? And he'd be like, give him a little treat.
That was a lie.
And as it turned out, once scientists started studying Clever Hans, it turned out that his trainer was cueing the horse. In other words, he'd say, what's 5 minus 2? And the trainer would know the answer was 3. And the horse would start doing its leg, and when he got to 3, the trainer would make some signal, and the horse would stop doing it. And the horse had learned that he just to look for the signal, do his leg until he looks for the signal. But the interesting thing psychologically about this whole act was that the trainer didn't realize he had trained the horse that way. The trainer thought the horse was really getting the problems right. The trainer would get so excited when he got to 3, the horse would pick up on the excitement and stop doing the leg. And so the trainer didn't know he had done this. Isn't that interesting? Test handy. This is a good question you have asked. Here it is. Omit 25.
Was the signal looking at the horse's eyes?
His eyes or something that the guy was doing was somehow he'd get excited when the answer came, and that signaled the horse. And he never realized he was doing that, and then the scientists figured it out. So it was fraud, but the guy wasn't really guilty of fraud, was he?
How did
It was
you
the horse's
figure that
fault.
out?
You couldn't do it in an empty room.
Some guys figured that it had to be a hoax, and they wanted to figure out how he was doing it, so they kind of studied him. And I don't know. That's a good question. You can probably look it up on Wikipedia or something, and it would tell about. Clever Hans was the name of the horse.
Was he German?
I don't know. I think it talks about him in our reading. Yeah, it talks about Clever Hans. Clever Hans would answer many questions by stamping his foot the appropriate number of times and respond to other questions. But a little careful experimentation by psychologist Oscar Plunks revealed that when Hans was prevented from seeing his questioners, or when they did not know the answers themselves, his powers left him. Clever Hans the Wonder Horse. So that's an idea that's anthropomorphism, putting on the horse the qualities of being able to do math when he really couldn't do the math. But as you'll see in this video, there are other animals that can actually do the math,